Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into a seriously fascinating and honestly kind of complex dynamic that's unfolding over in India right now. We're looking at how a massive, rapidly digitizing nation of over 1 billion people is trying to strike this delicate balance. On one hand, they want to embrace cutting-edge global innovation, right? But on the other, they have this absolute non-negotiable need to keep those billion-plus citizens safe. And that means safety in both the digital world and out there in the physical world.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because the stakes of modernizing a country at this sheer scale, they are absolutely massive. We're going to be looking at two totally different spaces today. We've got the messaging apps you're probably using every single day, and then we've got the autonomous cars being built for the highways of tomorrow. They seem totally unrelated, but the government's approach to both of them hinges entirely on one single defining question. How exactly do you protect 1 billion people?
To answer that, here is our roadmap for today. We're hitting 1. The tech safety crossroads. 2. The digital disguise. 3. Meta's layered defense. 4. Paving the way for autonomy. 5. How V2X connects cars. And finally, 6. Safety on every highway. Now, I know it might seem like we're bouncing between two completely different stories here, but stick with me. As we'll see, they are deeply connected by this one single thread of safety.
Section 1. The tech safety crossroads. Let's look at this double-edged sword.
And this brilliantly illustrates the central paradox we're facing. Because on one hand, you've got the Indian government actively pushing back, literally hitting the brakes on new digital privacy features for messaging apps. But then, on the flip side, they are simultaneously loosening regulations and stepping on the gas to accelerate the rollout of physical, autonomous driving tech. It's the exact same government taking two very different approaches to new tech, all under the umbrella of safety.
Moving to Section 2, the digital disguise. This is where messaging app scrutiny really comes into play.
To understand this, you have to realize that India's messaging market is just colossal. WhatsApp absolutely dominates here, with over 800 million users. I mean, that makes India its largest market globally. Then you've got Telegram sitting at around 100 million users, and Signal trailing with roughly 1 million. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Telegram has actually supported usernames since way back in 2014, and Signal rolled them out in early 2024. But it wasn't until WhatsApp's newly appointed CEO, Kunal Shah, announced that they were bringing usernames to their 800 million-strong user base that the Indian government really pushed back. I mean, they pushed back hard, eventually issuing formal notices to Telegram and Signal too. So why the sudden panic? Well, it's all about what usernames can hide. The government's core concern really stems from this absolute epidemic of online fraud, specifically these things called digital arrest scams. Have you heard of these? It is an incredibly sinister tactic where scammers literally pose as police officers on video calls. They will even go so far as to wear fake, totally realistic-looking uniforms. They basically convince these terrified victims that they're under some sort of strict criminal investigation, induce this massive state of panic, and then they extort money from them. Millions have already been lost to this scheme. So the government's argument is that adding usernames to these apps just hands these fraudsters another incredibly dangerous layer of anonymity, making it that much harder to spot them and track them down. Cyber experts are genuinely terrified of this. They describe it as a digital costume familiar on the outside, untraceable underneath. Just think about the absolute traceability nightmare this creates. Right now, a phone number starting with a +91 instantly tells an investigator, okay, we are dealing with an Indian number. It gives them a starting block. But with usernames, a scammer sitting literally anywhere on the globe can just grab a foreign virtual number, slap an official-looking Indian government logo on their profile, and use a local-sounding name. And to make matters worse, cybercrime officials point out that Meta already takes anywhere from 5 days to an indefinite amount of time just to respond to local data requests. So losing that immediate baseline visibility of a phone number, it could completely paralyze these fast-moving investigations where literally every single minute counts.
Which brings us to Section 3, Meta's layered defense. Let's look at their proposed safeguards against spam.
So the crucial point is, how are these tech companies actually responding to these threats? Well, Meta is arguing that they aren't just blinding law enforcement. They say they are actively building in safeguards. In fact, they've proposed 4 specific layers of defense to tackle cybercrime and spam. First off, there won't be a public directory. You can't just scroll through and browse for people's usernames. Second, they're reserving specific VIP usernames for public figures and government entities, which should mean scammers can't just easily impersonate official accounts. Third, they're planning to use contextual warnings. So if a stranger messages you, the app might pop up a prompt asking, hey, is this account new, or are they messaging from another country? And finally, step 4 is a username key. This is essentially a password that someone would need to enter before they can even send a message to your username.
But, not every tech leader out there believes that those safeguards are enough. So while WhatsApp's username feature is currently sitting frozen, and Telegram and Signal are facing some really uncomfortable questions from the government, Zoho co-founder Sridhar Vembu has taken a totally different route. He proactively announced that his homegrown messaging app, it's called Aratai, is going to drop usernames altogether. His whole perspective is that yes, while privacy is absolutely a necessity, phone numbers actually reveal identities in a way that inherently prevents harassment and leads to fewer data leaks. So in his view, reducing that exposure by forcing people to use their phone numbers is actually a net positive for overall safety.
Let's move to Section 4, paving the way for autonomy, and see how this all builds into deregulating auto tech.
177,000. That is the stark, absolutely devastating number of road fatalities recorded in India in 2024 alone. And this single, massive statistic, it is exactly why the government is so incredibly eager to get advanced safety tech out onto Indian roads. It's fascinating because while they view digital anonymity features as a direct threat to citizen safety, they view physical autonomous driving technology as a massive, life-saving necessity.
So, to try and change that grim fatality statistic, the government just made a massive regulatory shift. They have completely removed the licensing requirements for two highly specific but critical radio frequency bands. First, the 77 to 81 gigahertz band. This one is absolutely crucial for advanced driver assistance systems, what we call ADAS, so things like adaptive cruise control and autonomous emergency braking. And the second is the 5.9 gigahertz band, which is the backbone for V2X communication. Now, both of these are totally exempt from licensing. They literally tore down a major regulatory barrier overnight.
Section 5. How V2X connects cars. We're talking about giving vehicles a literal sixth sense.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that concept of a sixth sense for your car. V2X, which stands for Vehicle to Everything Communication, makes real-time data exchange possible between your car, the other cars around you, and even the surrounding road infrastructure. So picture this. You're driving on a winding highway. V2X can actually warn you about a car that just slammed on its brakes around a blind curve, way before you could ever visually see it. Or it can notify you that an ambulance is approaching from a blind intersection. It literally extends a driver's situational awareness far, far beyond their own physical line of sight.
And the impact of this deregulation, it is going to be felt across the entire automotive ecosystem. Luxury automakers like Mercedes-Benz and BMW, who are already using this tech internationally, well, now they can easily deploy it straight into the Indian market. But honestly, what's more important for the everyday driver is that domestic mass-market manufacturers, think Maruti Suzuki, Tata Motors, Mahindra, they can now affordably scale up the availability of these ADAS-equipped models. Plus, the global tech suppliers who actually build these systems behind the scenes, companies like Bosch, Continental, and Qualcomm, they are set to gain massively as demand for this tech completely skyrockets.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 6, Safety on Every Highway. Let's look at the ultimate goal here.
By dropping these specific licensing barriers, India is officially aligning its rules with US and European automotive standards. And guys, this is a really big deal. It means automakers no longer have to spend all this extra time and money creating specialized India-specific modifications just for the radar systems. That directly slashes manufacturing costs, and as a result, it drastically accelerates the mass-market rollout of these life-saving connected mobility systems. It's a textbook example of deregulation creating a direct path to greater public safety.
So what do we have? We have a government that's actively cracking down on messaging privacy to protect its citizens from digital scams, while simultaneously cutting massive amounts of red tape to put self-driving safety tech onto its physical roads. It's this wild, fascinating balancing act of modern regulation, and honestly, it leaves us with this really profound final question, one that came directly from our sources, that every digital citizen and tech company really has to grapple with now. In today's hyper-connected world, the toughest question isn't whether technology can make us anonymous, it's whether it can make us anonymous without making scammers completely invisible. Just think about that for a second the next time you open up a secure chat or turn on your car's cruise control. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep asking